Simon Cowell gave the world one direction and basically redefined modern talent show. But at 65, Simon Cowell cries after breaking his silence on Courtney Hadwin, showing a rare emotional side from the typically stoic judge. The world could remember when Courtney hit the stage on America's Got Talent Season 13 and transformed into a full-blown rock star and practically melted the stage. Millions watched that moment, over 310 million views now. This time, Simon was raw, vulnerable, human. What triggered it? So stick with me, because we're unpacking everything. Let's get into it. Courtney Hadwin's rise to fame. Courtney Hadwin's musical journey didn't start under bright lights or on a massive stage. It began in the quiet corners of northeast England, in a small village called Heselden, where she was born in 2004. From a young age, people around her started noticing something different. Teachers at Shotton Hall Academy said they could tell she wasn't just another student with a hobby. There was something magnetic about her. They remembered how she'd light up during school performances, not in the typical, I want to be the center of attention kind of way, but more like someone who became a completely different person the second music started playing. Can someone so young truly tap into the soul of rock and roll legends? That's exactly the kind of question people were asking as Courtney's voice, raspy, powerful, and far beyond her years, began to shake up local stages. At 65, the man who's made a career out of tearing people apart with one raised eyebrow just broke his silence on Courtney Hadwin. And trust me, what he said will leave you stunned. What made the world's toughest judge finally choke up, and why now? Stick around, because the way the story ends will give you chills. Her first notable public performance came at the Shotton Hall Theatre in Peterlee when she was just 12. Locals who were in the audience at the time still recall how her voice seemed to punch through the air with a confidence that didn't match her shy demeanor. It was one of those moments where you could almost hear people whispering to each other, "Who is this girl?" Because truly, no one expected that kind of stage presence from such a timid-looking child. And from that moment forward, Courtney wasn't just a student or a small-town girl. She was a rising performer with something to say. Her big break came in 2017 when she stepped into the national spotlight on The Voice Kids UK. She chose to audition with Nutbush City Limits by Tina Turner, a song that already demands grit and confidence. And to say she nailed it would be putting it lightly. Judges were floored. Danny Jones from McFly, who would eventually become her coach, took her under his wing and helped guide her to the finals. And while she didn't take home the crown, what she gained was arguably more important. She'd proven that she could hold her own among the best young talent in the country. People didn't just notice her, they remembered her. What stood out wasn't just her vocal range or her technical skill. It was her transformation. Viewers watched a reserved young girl morph into a force of nature the moment the music hit. It wasn't an act, and it wasn't rehearsed charisma. It felt real, and that's what made her different. Now, here's where the story really takes off. In 2018, at just 13 years old, Courtney decided to aim even higher. She auditioned for America's Got Talent, arguably the most high-stakes stage she'd ever stepped onto. Anyone watching that audition could see the nerves on her face. She looked unsure, quiet, even a little overwhelmed. But then the music started, Otis Redding's Hard to Handle. And what happened next stunned everyone in the room. Gone was the shy teenager, and in her place stood a rock and soul hurricane. Her voice, her movements, her energy. It all hit at once like a lightning bolt. The judges, the crowd, even the host, everyone was on their feet. Howie Mandel, clearly blown away, slammed the golden buzzer without hesitation. In his words, she reminded him of Janis Joplin. He even said she was born in the wrong era. And he wasn't the only one who felt that way. Was it possible that someone so young could channel the rawness and emotion of a past generation so effortlessly? For many, that moment confirmed it. Each of her performances on the show pushed that narrative even further. Whether she was taking on James Brown's Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, or going full throttle with Born to Be Wild, Courtney wasn't just singing covers. She was embodying them. Her stage presence wasn't flashy or over-rehearsed. Instead, it felt like she was letting something deep inside take over. She ended up placing 6th in the competition. But let's be honest, winning wasn't the point. Her time on the show did something more meaningful. It sparked a conversation. Who was this girl with the voice of a legend? And where would she go from here? After walking away from the bright lights and big promises of major record labels, Courtney Hadwin, yes, the same teenage powerhouse who once lit up the America's Got Talent stage, made a decision that would quietly reshape her entire musical future. It wasn't a decision made overnight. It wasn't driven by fame or fortune. It was about something much deeper, more personal, creative freedom. Isn't that what every true artist really craves? At the end of the day, Courtney, whose gravelly voice and electrifying performances once stunned the world and made Simon Cowell do a double take, had initially signed with Psycho Music and Arista Records. It seemed like the dream deal every up-and-coming musician hopes for. But behind the scenes, all wasn't as glamorous as it appeared. In an honest moment during a recent interview, she reflected on those early years, saying she had gone through a load of obstacles from the age of just 13. Imagine being that young and already trying to navigate not just growing up, but the often soul-crushing machinery of the music industry. She shared that after bouncing through a couple of record deals, she came to the painful realization that the labels didn't quite know what to do with her. They couldn't seem to figure her out, and rather than take the time to nurture her unique voice, they tried to squeeze her into a cookie-cutter pop mold. Isn't that the classic story? With so many talented artists being told they're too different to sell? One moment that really stuck with her was the treatment of her song Monsters. She had written it back in 2019 or 2020, pouring her raw emotions into it. But the label, in what seemed like a standard industry response, rejected it because it wasn't pop enough. That must have been tough to hear, being told, "Your art isn't marketable simply because it doesn't fit into someone else's definition of success." But instead of shrinking back, Courtney began to rethink everything. She wasn't going to keep creating music to meet expectations that weren't even hers in the first place. So what did she do? She broke free. She made the bold choice to go independent. No more executives. Over the course of 2023, she didn't just dip her toes into independence. She dove in headfirst. One by one, she dropped single after single. That Girl Don't Live Here in April, Call Me Back in July, Monsters in September, and Christmas Rocks in November. Each track stood as a personal declaration saying, "This is me." Unfiltered, unpolished by anyone else's standards. A big part of this new chapter came down to collaboration, not with corporate entities, but with real people who understood her. One of those people was Kevin Bowe, a seasoned songwriter and producer whom she met during her period of self-discovery. Together, they dug through the songs that had once been thrown out like yesterday's trash. And wouldn't you know it, among those so-called rubbish tracks was Monsters, which they decided to breathe life into again. "As soon as I became independent," she recalled, "Kevin jumped into that rubbish pile to bring the song back out to play. We loved it so much." Isn't it funny how some of the best things come back around when you finally believe in them again? And the fans, they didn't just nod politely. They cheered her on with open arms. The very same Monsters that was once brushed off by label execs ended up climbing to number 19 on Billboard's Hard Rock Digital Song Sales chart in October 2023. That's not just a personal win, it's a poetic one. It's proof that audiences are hungry for music with heart, not just what fits the trend of the week. But perhaps the most beautiful part of this journey has been the loyalty of her fans. Courtney herself has been quick to say that she wouldn't have the audience she has today without America's Got Talent. That's where the journey began for so many of her supporters. And through every twist and turn, from TV stages to corporate boardrooms to independent recording booths, they've stuck with her. Isn't that the kind of loyalty every artist dreams of? Right now, she's knee-deep in something that might be her most personal project yet. Her debut album titled Little Miss Jagged, scheduled for release on September 12, 2025. She's pouring everything she's got into it. Her passion, her experiences, and her genre-blending style that brings together the punch of rock, the emotion of soul, the groove of blues, and the catchiness of pop, all wrapped up in that unmistakable Courtney Hadwin voice that can't be replicated. So, what's the takeaway in all of this? Courtney Hadwin didn't just survive the music industry. She found a way to thrive in spite of it. She reminded everyone that you don't need a label stamp of approval to be legitimate. and that sometimes walking away from the biggest stage is what gives you the space to build your own. Isn't that the most powerful kind of success? But perhaps the most touching part of the story wasn't just about the music or the public statements. It was about everything that came before. Their professional relationship had been anything but smooth. From the moment young Courtney walked onto the AGT stage, all nerves and power vocals, to the years that followed under Cowell's label, they had struggled to stay on the same page creatively. Cowell, ever the perfectionist, had a vision. Courtney, even as a teenager, had her own ideas, ones that didn't always align with what his label wanted to market. Over time, those differences became divides. Eventually, the communication stopped altogether. But as Cowell later reflected, what made me emotional wasn't just her growth as an artist. It was recognizing that sometimes stepping back is the greatest gift you can give someone with extraordinary talent. Isn't that a lesson we all learn at some point, whether in business, friendship, or family? Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is let someone grow without us. And in this case, it seems that's exactly what happened. Courtney went on to build her career on her own terms, releasing bold, genre-blending music